Today we're diving into the strange anatomy of Leatherface. While he spreads brutal terror with his insanity, let me ask you, would Michael Myers, with his silent and relentless manner, be able to face and defeat Leatherface? Comment below. I want to know, who do you think is more relentless and powerful? Stay tuned, because on this journey, we'll reveal every detail of this horror icon, from his macabre outfits and frightening weapons to the mind behind the insanity. So, which of these monsters gives you more chills? Leatherface, a name that sends shivers down the spines of even the most dedicated horror fans. Behind that mask, made of human skin, hides one of the most iconic killers in cinema history. But what really makes this monstrous character so terrifying? What lurks beneath those macabre masks? Let's dive deep into the anatomy, abilities, and psychology of Sawyer, better known as Leatherface, the chainsaw cannibal. We'll explore how his physical characteristics, grotesque masks, and disturbed mind combine to create one of the most memorable villains in horror. Before we begin, if you appreciate content about the monsters and killers that populate our nightmares, consider subscribing to the channel. Each subscription helps us continue exploring the darker side of cinema, the dimensions of a monster. Leatherface is an imposing and intimidating presence. At approximately 6 feet and 10 inches tall, he literally towers over his victims like a human mountain. This impressive stature isn't just for visual effect. It's an essential part of what makes Leatherface truly terrifying. To achieve this frightening appearance in the original 1974 film, actor Gunnar Hansen, who stood about 6 feet 4 inches tall, wore boots with special soles that added several inches to his height. This simple technical trick helped create the impression of a superhuman predator, someone whose proportions seem slightly displaced from normal. Beyond height, Leatherface possesses a massive body structure. His robust physique isn't the result of athletic conditioning, but rather a combination of natural brute strength and a rare medical condition, acromegaly. This condition, which causes abnormal bone and tissue growth, contributes to his distinctive appearance and exceptional strength, especially in his hands and jaw, which are disproportionately large. Leatherface is estimated to weigh between 285 to 310 pounds, with most of that weight concentrated in his torso and arms. This combination of height and mass makes him exceptionally dangerous, allowing him to wield his iconic chainsaw, which normally weighs between 11 to 15 pounds, as if it were a natural extension of his body. Brute strength. Unlike other horror icons like Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers, Leatherface doesn't possess supernatural powers. His threat comes from something much more tangible and perhaps more disturbing. He is human, a human with extraordinary strength, but human nonetheless. Leatherface's brute strength is truly impressive. Throughout the franchise, he demonstrates the ability to lift adults with a single hand, throw them considerable distances, and even pierce walls with his body. These demonstrations aren't hyperbolic. They're manifestations of strength that's at the extreme end of the human spectrum. In a memorable scene from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, Leatherface demonstrates his ability to handle his chainsaw with deadly precision while dancing in a disturbing manner, indicating not just brute strength, but also surprising motor coordination with his weapon of choice. Fictional forensic reports within the film universe suggest that Leatherface could exert a force of up to 1/800 newtons with his hands, enough to crush human bones with ease. For context, an average adult can exert about 400-500 newtons in a strong handshake. Speed and agility. One of Leatherface's most disconcerting characteristics is the contrast between his massive body structure and his surprising mobility. Despite his heavy physique, he's capable of moving with surprising speed, especially over short distances. Studies of his chase scenes reveal that Leatherface can reach speeds of up to 15 miles per hour in short bursts. Not as fast as a professional athlete, but fast enough to catch panicking victims, especially on rough terrain or in enclosed spaces where his familiarity with the environment gives him an advantage. What makes his speed particularly remarkable is that he frequently maintains it while carrying heavy tools. The chainsaw that became his trademark weighs between 11-15 pounds, and yet he wields it with considerable dexterity while pursuing his victims for long periods. His agility also manifests in how he navigates tight spaces. In various scenes throughout the franchise, Leatherface demonstrates a disconcerting ability to appear and disappear quickly, moving silently despite his size, an ability that would define the slasher archetype for generations of horror films. Endurance and durability. Perhaps more impressive than his strength is Leatherface's extraordinary ability to absorb damage. Throughout the franchise, he survives injuries that would incapacitate or kill an ordinary person. This superhuman resistance isn't explained obtained by supernatural means, but presented as a combination of adrenaline, elevated pain threshold, and pure psychopathic determination. In Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Leatherface survives multiple gunshots, continues fighting even after suffering serious injuries, and in a notable scene continues advancing even after being dragged by a chain around his neck. In the 2022 Netflix film, we see Leatherface survive multiple gunshots and stabbings, only to resurface even more enraged. The message is clear. Leatherface doesn't feel pain like we do. His pain tolerance is almost mythological, allowing him to continue his carnage even after suffering debilitating injuries. This durability also extends to his stamina. In various chase scenes, Leatherface demonstrates impressive cardiovascular capacity, maintaining high-intensity pursuits for prolonged periods without showing signs of fatigue. This suggests that, despite his seemingly awkward physique, he possesses an extraordinarily efficient cardiovascular system. But Leatherface isn't immortal. He can be injured, can bleed, and theoretically can be killed. What makes him so terrifying is precisely the fact that he absorbs punishment that would bring down any normal human being and simply keeps advancing, a human tank driven by pure rage and determination. The masks. No discussion of Leatherface's anatomy would be complete without a detailed analysis of his iconic masks. These aren't mere accessories, they're literal and metaphorical extensions of his anatomy, representing different aspects of his fragmented personality. In the original film, Leatherface uses 3 distinct masks, each representing a different facet of his psyche. The killing mask, made from Kirk's skin, this is the mask Leatherface wears during his killing sessions. It's the most brutal and least processed, reflecting the primitive and violent nature of this facet of his personality. The old lady mask. When performing the domestic role, Leatherface wears this more refined mask, complete with grotesquely applied makeup. This mask represents his maternal or domestic side, often seen when he's cooking or serving the family. The pretty woman mask, the most elaborate of his masks in the first film, worn during the infamous family dinner. This mask represents his attempt at civility and refinement, complete with makeup and wig. The creation of these masks is a macabre process that deserves analysis. Leatherface meticulously removes the facial skin of his victims, preserving it through rudimentary tanning techniques. He then makes precise cuts for the eyes, nose, and mouth, and sometimes adds makeup and other adornments. The masks aren't just cosmetic, they're functional. The preserved human skin molds to Leatherface's face, creating an almost hermetic seal. This explains why the masks seem to move naturally with his facial expressions, adding an extra layer of horror to the visual. Tobe Hooper, director of the original film, explained that the masks determine Leatherface's personality. Who he wanted to be that day determined which mask he put on, said Hooper. This is a profound revelation. For Leatherface, identity isn't fixed, but fluid and determined by external layers. The face behind the masks. Few have seen Leatherface's true face and lived to tell the tale. On the rare occasions when his face is revealed in the films, we see a severely disfigured face, marked by a combination of congenital conditions and self-mutilation. According to the expanded mythology of the franchise, Leatherface was born with various facial deformities, including cleft lip, severe facial asymmetry, and a dermatological condition that left his skin with a scarred appearance. These deformities, combined with years of family abuse and social mockery, led him to develop a deep hatred for his own face. In some films in the series, particularly the 2017 prequel, we see that before adopting his human skin masks, Leatherface used bandages and animal skins to hide his face. This progression of facial concealment reflects his gradual psychological decline. The true horror, perhaps, is the suggestion that behind the masks there is no cohesive identity. As actor Gunnar Hansen explained, the idea of the mask is that there is no personality under the mask. There is nothing under the mask, which is what makes him so scary. The fragmented mind. Leatherface's anatomy isn't limited to the physical. His psyche also has a unique structure that deserves analysis. Various films in the franchise suggest that Leatherface suffers from multiple psychological conditions, including dissociative personality disorder, trauma-induced psychosis, and possible mental retardation. In the original film, Leatherface demonstrates behaviors that suggest delayed cognitive development. He reacts to fear like a child, emitting high-pitched sounds of panic when disturbed. This mental infantilization contrasts strongly with his physical brutality, creating a disturbing dichotomy. His relationship with the Sawyer family is particularly revealing. He demonstrates total submission to older family members, particularly his brother, the cook. When confronted or reprimanded, Leatherface adopts submissive postures, sometimes even self-mutilating in response response to stress. Fictional studies within the film universe suggest that his brain anatomy may present abnormalities, particularly in regions responsible for emotional processing and impulse control. The frontal lobe, which regulates decision-making and impulse control, is described as underdeveloped, while the limbic system, responsible for primitive emotional responses, would be hyperactive. This neurological combination would result in exactly the type of behavior we see: extreme emotional reactions, inability to control violent impulses, and a deep dependence on authority figures for direction. The arsenal and body extension. While his chainsaw is undisputedly his signature weapon, Leatherface's arsenal is diverse and deserves analysis as extensions of his anatomy. Each tool he wields functions as a lethal prosthesis, amplifying his already formidable physical capabilities. The chainsaw deserves special attention. The model used in the original film was a Poulan 306A, weighing approximately 13 pounds. This isn't a light tool. Wielding it for prolonged periods requires considerable strength in the arms and shoulders. Leatherface not only handles it for long periods, but does so with lethal precision, suggesting that his arm muscles and shoulder structures have extraordinary development. His sledgehammer, another frequently used weapon, requires a different set of motor skills. Unlike the chainsaw, which depends on sustained strength, the hammer requires explosive strength and precise timing. Leatherface demonstrates impressive proficiency with this weapon, often incapacitating victims with a single calculated blow. Perhaps most impressive is his dexterity with meat hooks. The ease with which he manages to hang adult human bodies on hooks demonstrates not just brute strength, but also intuitive anatomical knowledge. He knows exactly where to insert the hook to support the weight of a human body, a macabre knowledge acquired through years of practice. Sensory abilities. Leatherface's senses are noteworthy, particularly his hearing and smell, which seem to be more acute than normal. In several films of the franchise, he demonstrates the ability to locate victims by sound, even in noisy environments or through walls. His sense of smell also seems enhanced, allowing him to track victims like a predator. This ability is particularly evident in the 2022 film, where he seems able to follow the fear trail of his victims. Interestingly, these enhanced sensory abilities contrast with what appears to be a reduction in complex sensory processing capacity. Leatherface frequently seems overwhelmed by complex stimuli, such as bright lights or loud and chaotic sounds. This sensory paradox, heightened senses but impaired processing, adds another layer to his characterization as a primordial predator trapped in a modern world. Vocal anatomy. Leatherface's vocal profile deserves special analysis. Unlike many horror villains who are silent or utter memorable phrases, Leatherface communicates through a series of non-verbal sounds that reflect his unique vocal anatomy. His high-pitched screams of panic, grunts of anger, and occasional pig-like vocalizations suggest an abnormal laryngeal structure. In some films of the franchise, it's suggested that he suffered vocal cord damage in childhood, possibly as a result of abuse. In others, his inability to speak is attributed to delayed cognitive development. Regardless of the cause, his non-verbal vocalization becomes an integral part of his terrifying presence. There's something deeply disturbing about a human predator who communicates only through primitive sounds, as if language, that fundamentally human characteristic, were beyond his reach. In moments of extreme stress or excitement, Leatherface emits a characteristic sound, a high-pitched squeal that seems impossible to come from a man of his size. This contrast between his imposing physique and his almost childlike vocalization creates a cognitive dissonance that amplifies the horror of his appearances. Feeding and metabolism. As a member of a cannibal family, Leatherface's diet consists primarily of human meat. This dietary preference raises fascinating questions about his metabolism and physiology. Regular cannibalism would expose Leatherface to significant risks, including prion diseases such as the human variant of mad cow disease. However, throughout decades of murderous activity and consumption of human meat, he shows no signs of neurological degeneration typically associated with these conditions. This suggests some intriguing possibilities. Either Leatherface possesses a unique genetic resistance to prion diseases, or the Sawyer family has developed preparation methods that minimize these risks. His metabolism seems to be extraordinarily efficient. Considering his size and level of physical activity, Leatherface probably requires a daily caloric intake of 4,000 calories just for maintenance. Human meat, being rich in protein and relatively lean, would be an efficient source of these calories. This aspect of his physiology is rarely explored in the films, but adds a layer of existential horror to his character. He literally sustains his existence through the consumption of other humans. Reproductive capacity. An often neglected aspect of Leatherface's anatomy is his reproductive capacity. In the third film of the franchise, it's revealed that Leatherface has a daughter, known only as Little Girl Sawyer or Bobby Sawyer. This revelation is deeply disturbing, as it implies that Leatherface not only possesses normal reproductive function, but also suggests that he may have sexually violated a victim or maintained some kind of aberrant relationship. Leatherface's daughter exhibits disturbed behaviors similar to her father's, dragging a macabre doll, actually a baby skeleton, everywhere. This intergenerational transmission of psychopathology raises disturbing questions about nature versus nurture in the development of violent behaviors. The existence of his daughter also suggests that Leatherface's condition may have transmissible genetic components, a truly terrifying prospect when we consider the implications for future generations. Longevity and aging. Leatherface is a rare example of longevity within the slasher genre. Over several decades and films, he maintains a level of physical strength and brutality that defies the natural limits of the human body. Considering the possibility that he has a condition like acromegaly, which usually reduces life expectancy, his survival and physical performance are even more surprising. This resistance can be explained by a combination of factors: his active lifestyle, a diet based on animal protein, or even a genetic anomaly that keeps him functional even at an advanced age. The absence of supernatural powers only reinforces the terror he represents, that of a completely human monster, but capable of extreme feats. In the 2022 Netflix film, which takes place approximately 50 years after the events of the original movie, Leatherface appears still formidable and capable of brutal killing, despite presumably being in his 60s or 70s. His ability to decapitate with a single chainsaw blow, face multiple opponents, and resist serious injuries shows that his abilities remain intact, as if time had failed to weaken him. Can Leatherface be defeated? One of the most debated questions among fans of the franchise is whether Leatherface can be killed. Unlike supernatural killers like Jason Voorhees or Freddy Krueger, Leatherface is ostensibly human, without mystical powers of resurrection. However, his ability to survive serious injuries borders on the supernatural. In the 2022 film, he survives multiple gunshots and stab wounds, only to resurface and continue his killing. In a post-credit scene, he is seen walking toward the original Sawyer house, suggesting that even the apparently fatal injuries he suffered weren't enough to stop him. The answer to this question seems to lie in his extraordinary physical resistance and elevated pain threshold. Leatherface can be injured, he bleeds, he feels pain, but his tolerance for these stimuli is so high that injuries that would incapacitate or kill a normal person only enrage him more. From a fictional medical perspective, we can speculate that Leatherface possesses a combination of several rare physiological characteristics: increased bone density, possibly related to his acromegaly, blood vessels with exceptional capacity for contraction when damaged, minimizing blood loss, and naturally elevated levels of adrenaline and endorphins that mask pain and increase resistance. These characteristics, combined with his pure psychopathic determination, create a human predator who, although theoretically mortal, in practice demonstrates a tenacity that borders on the supernatural. Comparisons with other horror icons. To understand what makes Leatherface so unique, it's interesting to compare him to other horror icons. Unlike Michael Myers, whose strength often has supernatural origins, Leatherface impresses by being entirely human. His resistance and brutality come from biology, not magic. Jason Voorhees, especially in his later versions, is practically invincible, while Leatherface's vulnerability makes him more credible and therefore more frightening. Freddy Krueger operates in dreams and symbolizes deep psychological horrors, as does Leatherface, but the latter translates his trauma into pure physical violence, direct and visceral. And when we compare him to more realistic killers like Ghostface or Buffalo Bill, Leatherface appears as a brutal middle ground, exaggerated enough to seem like a force of nature, but still rooted in reality. It's this mixture that makes him so iconic and so terrifying. Conclusion: Leatherface is the perfect fusion between human and monstrous. His strength and brutality verge on superhuman, but are still anchored in reality, and that's what makes him so terrifying. Unlike supernatural creatures, he is a distorted reflection of what a human being can become without morality or civility. His impact on horror comes not only from his grotesque appearance, but from the real fear that monstrosity can inhabit any of us. If you enjoyed this macabre analysis, leave your like, share, and subscribe, and comment below which horror villain do you want to see in the next video.